Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session hosted by Talent Collective. And we have a guest here, Sophie Alcorn, who actually came and spoke with us a couple of months ago prior to the election about immigration and visas, and was just doing so much great educating to the world of talent acquisition, just about one, the benefits of hiring internationally, but then two, just a lot of the intricacies that come with it. And during that call, there were just a lot of questions and a lot of unknowns, given that we were about to embark on an election cycle. And I think it was a lot of unknowns, right? So we invited her back, and really excited to hear just some post-election thoughts of how immigration may change with this next president and the whole shebang. So Sophie is a wonderful attorney who focuses on immigration. Many of her clients are technology companies and startups and larger technology companies, specifically in the Bay Area, but also obviously nationwide. So wanted to kick it off to Sophie and pass the baton over to her.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Krista. It's always a pleasure to be here and get the opportunity to speak with you in the Talent Collective community. And hi, everybody listening. Uh, Happy to share my post-election reflections on immigration and opportunity here with you today. As Krista mentioned, my name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law, host of the Sophie Alcorn podcast. Wrote a column at TechCrunch for 4 years on high-skilled immigration. I like to meditate. I'm a mom, and I believe the world should be a place where every person has the opportunity to self-actualize and be in the places where they can be in their maximum flow state. So unlocking immigration for people, I think, is really, really critical to that. And so that's one of the reasons I love immigration. And because I am a lawyer, I do have my disclaimer. This is an educational service. This is not legal advice. If you need to have a private, confidential conversation to get actual legal advice and guidance, happy to book a consultation with you directly. This is educational only. Our team is growing. We're remote. We're across the United States. I founded the firm 9 years ago out of my kitchen. We've helped over 4,000 people get visas and green cards to the United States. And one of the things that I first wanted to start talking about is some potential positive policy shifts that might actually happen, which could be some silver linings with this whole immigration thing. And maybe just to set some groundwork, or to lay the groundwork. And I'm happy to take your questions. If you guys on the call want to come off mute, you're always welcome to jump in, or you can put questions in the chat window. Happy to answer those, or focus on those topics if there's anything that's really top of mind for you. But okay, so Trump won the election. The Republicans are going to control the House and the Senate. They're probably not going to have 60 seats in the Senate, so there won't be the ability to override a filibuster. So they still have to get some sort of consensus to actually get a law through. Like, they have to get the moderates to be able to agree. So that's a good thing. A lot of the campaign rhetoric was about mass deportations of 10 to 15 million undocumented people who are currently in the United States. That's going to be a huge mess, both in terms of like the people that are going to be affected, the economic impacts, the business impacts to the companies that are hiring those individuals, and to the immigration system as a whole. The whole thing is probably going to slow down in the coming months. That would be my best guess, just based on the Trump 1.0 administration, which got a lot slower. All the stuff they talked about doing in the campaign rhetoric, much of it would be illegal if done immediately. So they might have to change the laws in order to do it. So they might need to try to get some sort of border bill / ICE funding bill through, because these deportations would probably take tens, if not like $100 billion to be able to deport that many people. And it might take like we're talking about like 1 million people a year. And right now, I think the immigration system has about capacity to deport maybe 500,000 people a year, and there's 3 million people waiting. So like the system would have to just be massively scaled. So the fact that they would need new laws and they would need more money means they would need a law passed by Congress, which means they'll have to negotiate with the moderates, which means other things might be on the table, like a border wall, like they were almost going to do this summer, but got derailed because of the election, or like high skilled immigration reform, right? So that's the context from which this section of slides comes from. So there are some, potential silver linings here. So one of the super interesting things on over the summer was that Trump 2.0 is a lot different than Trump 1.0. Trump 1.0 was more about populism and jobs for the working class, and had an anti-immigrant across the board sentiment that extended to H-1B workers and big tech. Trump 2.0, we have Elon Musk, buddy with the president. We have the incoming president, the former president. We have the vice president, JD Vance, who is a former venture capital investor. And we have Vivek Ramaswamy, biotech founder and CEO. So they're all pro high-skilled immigration. And it's going to be really interesting to see their influence against the party hardliner, more xenophobic voices that were so strong in Trump 1.0. Trump this summer went on the All In podcast and talked about how he wanted to do something that was originally Hillary Clinton's idea, which, he wasn't going to give her credit for it, but they're all saying the same thing. It's basically, why can't we just staple a green card to every college diploma of every international student? So that is a very interesting concept. And on that podcast, he actually talked about making it possible for even community college graduates, which would be crazy. Now, that would need some legal changes. So in this whole immigration debate that's going to come to a forefront in the buildup to the January 20th inauguration and in the months following, the incoming House Majority Leader, I believe, said that the first House of Representatives bill would be about energy. The second bill they're going to be that they're going to be introducing is going to be about immigration. So we're probably going to see big immigration changes coming, and the scope is the question. Like, is it just about enforcement? Is it the border? Is it the whole system? We don't know. But there is vast agreement that we need more STEM professionals in the United States able to legally live here, work here, have a pathway to a green card. And the other interesting trend is that now that we're out of the zero interest rate policy era, big tech doesn't have the incentive to keep so many people on payroll anymore, right? So we've seen all these layoffs. So now the interest in immigration is coming from little tech and startups and innovation. And so the type of merit-based immigration system we might see that could develop might have more for early stage startups and founders, or maybe more for particular job verticals related to critical and emerging technologies like AI. So there's lots of ways you could set it up, but there's definitely been shifts in the rhetoric and the interest. Now, if we've had multiple proposals for green cards for US graduates over the years, and those have ranged in different ways. Everything from anybody who gets a STEM master's or PhD from the US should be able to be in the immediate relative category of a green card and not be subject to any quotas or green card backlogs with the visa bulletin. That could be very interesting. There's probably a lot of ways to do this, like stapling the green card to the diploma concept. But as it stands, this is not, you definitely need a statutory change, because F1 student visas, regular OPT, STEM OPT, CPT curricular practical training, all of these F1 work programs that companies use so much, the students are still supposed to have non-immigrant intent, which is the intent to leave the United States, not work here or live here permanently, not try to get a green card. So their whole life is contingent on them being able to renew these visas, proving that they're going to leave here one day. So the further down the road you go after graduating and then onto your STEM OPT, if your F1 visa it's expiring and you need to travel internationally and you're working for a US company, it can be hard to renew the F1 visa at those later stages. So we would have to change immigration laws so that F1 status could be a dual intent status, like an H-1B, so that if you come here as an international student, you don't have to prove that you're going to be leaving. And we have 1 million international students a year. Our share of, like, due to population growth, we're still getting more international students, but our market share of international students in the world as a country is decreasing. Like Canada and Australia are getting, their international student numbers are on the rise, where ours are kind of just like stagnating or slowly growing. So if as a country we want access to the best talent, this would be a very important change to consider. There may also be changes to extraordinary ability visas. We might see them getting faster at some point. So unclear, but Project 2025, which is the Heritage Foundation think tank's agenda for the Trump administration, which Trump says he didn't read and doesn't agree with, but like thousands of people in his administration go by this thing. It's like a playbook, and it says deport everybody who's undocumented so we can have a functional immigration system so that America can recruit and retain the world's most talented individuals to come here and build emerging and critical technologies on these shores and not elsewhere, from a national security perspective and an economic perspective. So what I'm telling all of my individual clients from India and China and other countries is you're probably going to be fine. It might slow down, but the incentives are aligned because that America wants people like you here. So like it's going to be interesting. We might, want to, if you need to get a new visa, you might want to consider trying to do that soon, or maybe getting your travel done during the holidays. It might be good to just have you be like situated come January, but you're going to get through this. Like, on the whole, America has a vested interest in having you here. So that, I think, can be helpful for people to hear. Now, there's a wide variety of other shifts that are not as rosy, but are probably very interesting to people working in HR and people ops and recruiting. So in Trump 1.0, we saw much stricter H-1B visa criteria. And this is one where the economics changed, right? So I don't know if there's going to be as strong of a backlash against H-1Bs this time. Stephen Miller is still in the administration, and he's the kind of like xenophobic guy who was at the heart of all of these Trump 1.0 policies. So he's still around. But on the other hand, then you have like Elon and Vivek running Doge, Department of Governmental Efficiency, which they're inventing to try to cut budgets. And then it's like, well, USCIS is actually like a profitable agency. They run on the petition fees. They don't get tax allocations. So they're revenue generating, or at least they have to survive on their own budget. And and if you look at like Elon and SpaceX and Tesla, they're going to want more H-1Bs more quickly available, less requests for evidence, right? And so that's potentially at odds with this like extreme vetting enforcement thing that we had in Trump 1.0, which really targeted computer programmers, but I suppose could be applied to other job categories. Now, another topic we see, I've kind of mentioned this, but more scrutiny, more delays, bottlenecks. So the potential to I go on these immigration lawyer calls and talk to other practitioners, and we're like, we don't want to spread misinformation. We don't want to fear monger. So I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to, level set and be realistic. Like, if global visa processing times slow down, that could be disruptive for business if you have folks who need to conduct international business trips. And we're out of COVID now, and people need to travel internationally. And there's like supply chain issues and things, right? So if you have people in your companies who you rely on, who definitely have to travel for work, trying to make sure that they have their 10-year US B1, B2 visitor visa, valid, or they have a valid H-1B stamp in their passport, like those types of things for those key employees whose travel is a job requirement, that can be very important to just get in order now. But there is a time limit on how early you can apply. So you actually can't apply for an H-1B extension or amendment more than 6 months before the expiration date. Excuse me. You can apply for an amendment at any time when the job duties change. You can't apply for an extension more than 6 months before the expiration date. So, and it usually takes about 2 to 3 months to prepare the paperwork and have some breathing room. So let's say it's like premature to start any sort of extension process for people whose visas are expiring towards the end of next summer. But if it's, anytime before, I don't know, let's say like Labor Day or maybe before the 4th of July, like those would be individuals we're talking to your immigration lawyer about, potentially starting their extension now. That could be helpful in those cases. But at a certain point, it's just too early. Now, I really don't know how this plays into the whole thing with the two polarities of like xenophobia, don't take American jobs, versus America needs to attract and retain the world's top talent, sort of conflicting policy objectives. But the H-4 visa work authorization for spouses of H-1B holders, this has been an extremely valuable tool for working professional spouses in the US since Obama created it about 9 years ago. And Trump 1.0 did try to end the H-4 work permit for these dependent spouses. Not all of the H-4 visa holders are eligible. Their primary H-1B spouse has to get through certain green card milestones before they're allowed to work at all. But I think there's a population of tens of thousands of individuals, mostly women professionals in the United States, might be up to like 100,000 workers on H-4 work permits. And many of these are dual income families. There's, sometimes the super smart spouse is on the H-4 work permit. So it's not even that like, oh, well, the intelligent work spouse we want in the workforce is the one who has the H-1B. The H-1B is so random, right? So like the really great worker might be on the H-4 EAD work permit. So that is something to monitor. There's been litigation about it as well. And with a lot of these programs, they were created based on regulation. And so they can be undone, but only in a way that there is authority to do. So if it's a decision the president can make, then in the correct way, he can do an executive order. If it's a decision an agency wants to make, then in the correct way, they can follow the Administrative Procedures Act and create a new regulation or change an existing regulation. But how you do it is complicated, and in Trump 1.0, they messed up on a lot of their repeal efforts. We'll see how they choose to go about that this time, if it is a priority. For L visas, if any of you work with companies that have offices abroad, these did get stricter in Trump 1.0. I have not heard about this at all, but I suppose we could have another regulation. Again, like buy American, hire American, which we had before, which is like, don't transfer your people from another country to your office here, hire Americans instead. So that made it tighter and harder to do L visas under Trump 1.0. Maybe we'll have it come back, unclear. And then likewise, if any of your companies have a parent company overseas and they qualify for these trade or investment E1, E2 visas, we could also see some sort of buy American, hire American requirements, make the investment thresholds higher, and provide stricter definitions of who qualifies. So it could make it harder primarily for small businesses. You know, STEM OPT is sort of like the H4 EAD, and it is one of these regulatory creatures. It was originally 17 months, and then a regulation extended it to 24 months. This is such an important pathway for so many workers in the US to be employed at companies. If you took it away, it would create a major hardship for a lot of people. So we shall see. There could also be restrictions on third-party placements for consulting or firms, or so that could be another thing that might impact the type of work people do. So with all of this, I think it's important to really inventory your workforce and figure out who you have, in which buckets, what jobs they need to be able to do, how much travel, when their expirations are, where they are in the green card process, and if you want to consider any potential backup options to help them with their immigration. Additionally, if I do get what I want for high skilled immigration, it might potentially come with other consequences, right? Like, are we still going to have artists and entertainers in the workforce? Like if Kamala had become the president, people would want things like, you know, unlimited H-1B visas for nonprofits. But that's certainly not going to be on the table now. But if we do have like a higher focus on STEM, then might make it more restrictive for other types of work categories. But probably healthcare would be a priority as well. We've had a nursing shortage. My dad was an immigration lawyer, and I was born in the 80s. And I remember even as a very little girl, like he built his practice trying to help bring in nurses to the US for the nursing shortage. And, you know, 40 plus years later, we still have a nursing shortage. So it would be nice if we could fix that with immigration and education as well. Now, another thing that could affect employee populations is the potential end of various parole programs that we've seen spring about in recent years. Some of these are regulatory creatures like temporary protected status. Several that's issued on a country by country basis. It's like everybody currently in the US who's been here since, you know, I don't know, like January 1st, 2020, who's from Afghanistan, or maybe that summer was like July of 2022, and there was the evacuation. But it's like, if you're from this country and you've been here from a certain date, and we decide that your country is so bad, we're not going to send you back, you can have this thing called temporary protected status, and that has to get renewed every several years. So many of those countries, their programs are going to be reevaluated because they're up for renewal. DACA could be affected, but Trump could have attempted to cancel DACA at the beginning of the Trump 1.0 administration, and he didn't. He waited like 8 to 12 months until there was too much pressure from the far right And then he went, started, there was a bunch of litigation about the program. I believe there's about 500,000 to 1 million people on DACA in the United States right now. And they're, law-abiding college graduates, have jobs, members of the community, been in the US since they were little kids. DACA hasn't been the major political rhetoric priority given the mass deportations that they want to do. So weirdly, maybe the DACA people will end up getting saved somehow while other people get deported. I don't know. I'm just speculating there. It's been a lot of interesting key cabinet picks as well, which are going to have voices in the administration. Some of these I mentioned already, like Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk with Doge. So this, shows the influence of the tech industry on the new administration. And yeah, it's just really interesting because Elon tweeted something like a week ago that was like, hey, Doge is coming after immigration inefficiencies too. But like, as I mentioned, right, they're not a cost center. They're more of like a neutral center in the government, but they definitely need reform and efficiency. There's huge backlogs. I mean, in a way, it could be wonderful if they make it like functional and fast, right? We haven't had that in decades, so maybe there's some good news there. We have a Secretary of Commerce nominee that is aligned with Trump's economic policies. So, I mean, there's a lot of economic policies, but it could be more about US manufacturing, training up a US skilled workforce. To some extent, that could involve immigrants. Tom Homan is the former ICE director who's being called the border czar. So he's going to be the forefront of this mass removal effort, however that shakes out. And then Kristi Noem was the governor of South Dakota, and she just got tapped to become the Secretary of Homeland Security. And so she's an advocate for border security, but one of the other interesting things about her is there are several universities in South Dakota that all have large international student populations, and it's a tiny state, right? They have like 1 million people or less who live there, so everybody knows everybody. But one of the universities in South Dakota is like the nation's top cybersecurity program, and that collaborates with DHS a lot. So and they're advocating for high skilled immigration. So that's just like another thread where maybe high skilled immigration can come into the mix if the future Department of Homeland Security secretary is favorable to it. Okay. So like, what does this mean on the balance? Well, immigration is certainly possible. There are opportunities for high skilled STEM professionals, exceptional talent, and entrepreneurs. Some of the proposed policies might introduce visa requirements. There is the potential for a more selective immigration environment. There might be backlogs or growing backlogs. Most of what the Biden administration did on immigration was primarily about reducing backlogs and speeding up processing times, because between State Department officers retiring because they didn't like Trump's policies, so then the consulate slowed down, and then COVID, the Trump 1.0 administration saw a lot of attrition, and so everything slowed down even before the pandemic. So there is that potential for a slowed immigration adjudication mechanism in Trump 2.0. But all of this, there's going to be a lot of details that are going to shake out over the next 4 years. And I think as a nation, what we're really looking at is, how do we protect our economic interests? How do we retain our technological advantage? And then how do we want to be as a society with immigration? And, at least where it comes to our economy, business, and technology, I think we have a massive opportunity to advance where we are as a country by leveraging the strengths of high-skilled immigrants to our companies and our countries. So in general, at my firm, we're encouraging this proactive approach. We try to avoid RFEs, requests for evidence, from the get-go, and have a very strong approval rate by, preparing very thoroughly and strategically and having that consultative boutique approach to really make sure that the case is as strong as possible before we file. And we're constantly monitoring the government standards, like the definitions of H-1B and who qualifies. So we're going to be monitoring that and advising our clients accordingly. And I think just being proactive about what your talent needs are going to be at your company for the next 4 years. Do you want to leverage immigrants? There are a variety of functional immigration programs that can work because we get visas routinely approved in all sorts of immigration situations. And some of what those are that are pretty cool are the H-1B lottery is still functioning somewhat. There's about a 30% chance of any single person getting selected. But if you need folks to start working for you and they don't have the H-1B lottery and they don't qualify for any other types of visas, your company there's a way now to get H-1Bs without the lottery, even at a private company. And the way it works is the law says that people working at universities, nonprofits affiliated with universities, and nonprofit research organizations, employees of those organizations do not need to have they do not need to go through the lottery in order to get their H-1B work visa. So the companies can employ them any time of year, any start date, no lottery, no randomness, no waiting. And there's another concept, which is a concurrent H-1B, where a single person can have 2 H-1Bs at the same time, one to work at company A, one to work at company B. So if you combine these two concepts, there's been this new protocol that some different nonprofits are doing, which is the nonprofits exist, they're affiliated with universities. They are willing to hire international workers and get them H-1Bs without the lottery. And once the worker has one of those cap exempt, aka no lottery H-1B, like for 5 hours a week to work at a nonprofit, then a private company can piggyback on a second concurrent H-1B for full-time work. And then the person can work their normal job at the company without going through the H-1B lottery. So there's some couple of great nonprofits that have sprung up to offer this. For a large enough organization that needed a specific talent pipeline and didn't want to deal with immigration, it might make economic sense to start your own nonprofit to do this for your company. So there's a variety of ways to do it, but that's one of the creative things that exists by regulation, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. So there's this really wonderful opportunity to be creative and proactive and still get your immigration needs met for your workforce in now and going into the future. So oh, yes. We're already getting ready for H-1B season again. So H-1B's lottery is happening in March, as it does every year. It is now a one person, one chance system. So a couple of years ago, the incentives got really weird. USCIS published a report. One person got 86 companies to give him bona fide job offers in the H-1B lottery. But if you got 5, that would be enough to pretty much guarantee that you were going to be selected. So a lot of people gamed the system. The government got upset. They changed it. So now it's one person, one chance. So that means that if you're willing to sponsor, you're less likely to have your person quit right after the lottery if another company selected them because they only got one chance. So that's the H-1B lottery. And if you need help with immigration and are considering putting candidates in the lottery, we have flat fee pricing, and we have like a standard rate that kicks in December and goes until we have to do our, last minute, you waited too long. We have a higher fee now rate closer to the lottery, but we are offering a November early bird special where you save $400 or $500 per H-1B that you want to put in the lottery. So if anybody would like help with that, you can definitely reach out to me. But just, looking back, a retrospective, I started this law firm in my kitchen 9 years ago, before Trump got elected. And we successfully navigated President Trump's first term, providing creative immigration assistance and support for now, as I mentioned, over 4,000 individuals. And the way we do that is by focusing on solutions. So some of those solutions that we offer, in addition to the ones I mentioned, for your employees or for, high skilled people you're recruiting, they might want some of the extraordinary ability or national interest green card and visa options. And I have an online course for how somebody can become qualified called Alcorn Academy. We have a 4-week assessment program to see if somebody is, smart and accomplished enough for one of these Einstein visas. That's called Legal Launch. We can help them be self-employed or have a variety of jobs by getting an O1 with an agent. If any of you are working with startups, it's now possible for company owners to qualify for H-1Bs. So that's an opportunity for early stage companies. We can help people speed up their green card processes to get to the front of the line. So we try to be very, very creative. And if you ever need help, you're always welcome to reach out. We're going to ask your candidate certain questions. And then we are always happy to provide companies with a free assessment on what the options are to employ somebody. And before I go into Q&A, I'm probably going to take down my screen sharing, but if you need anything, you can always email us at hello@alcorn.law. And I'll also put my LinkedIn and my personal email into the chat window. And I'm always happy to help as well. So you're welcome to stay connected. But there we go. And now I'm happy to answer any questions. And just thank you so much, Krista, for having me, and I hope this was helpful.
Absolutely. I loved hearing your take on all of that, and definitely a different time around than, like you said, Trump 1.0. So it will be interesting to hear and see what happens over the next couple of years, but could go a couple of different ways, right?
There's a lot of, man, this whole year with the election, I'm like, there's that philosophy thing about Schrodinger's cat, and it's like a cat in a box in quantum physics, and you don't know if the cat's alive or dead at the same time, and it's like both. And that's what I felt like about this election, and I guess that's what it'll be like about this year. We'll see, but everybody keeps thinking like, is it a sprint? Is it a sprint? No, oh, this is a marathon. Oh, this is a double marathon.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Well, awesome. Does anyone have any questions for Sophie? And of course, can reach out individually, but any initial thoughts or questions that we can help answer? Not me, of course, because I'm not an expert on this.
Not on this.
No,
but
not on this.
But on other things. You are an expert on things. Yeah.
Sophie, hi, this is Carrie. I don't have any questions per se, but I just want to thank you. Like, this has been really helpful. I think it sheds a lot of light, in terms of maybe how some of the decisions are made, and can they be quick? Can they be fast? And so I just really want to thank you. This has been really informative.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. That's so kind of you. I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and even like who Trump has aligned with, like those are all super fascinating. As I see through like I see a lot of news articles come through. I just see like the headlines, you know, popping up in my inbox, and I don't know who half these people are, but you know, when you really look into it, then you start to go, oh geez, okay, yeah, this is interesting.
It's an interesting motley crew cast of characters. You know, Rebel Alliance sort of a thing that they've got going on. So it's not like a unified, like there's a lot of different characters, a lot of different personalities, and a lot of different goals. So it'll be interesting to see how that all unfolds.
Totally. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was thinking too. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. If anybody has any more questions, of course, you're always welcome to reach out to me. We're happy to help.
Thanks, Sophie. We appreciate your time. I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving next week too, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.
Okay. Thanks for
Okay.
having
Thank
me.
you again.
Happy
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanksgiving. Bye.
Bye.